Alright, what we're going to look at today is a guitar that has too much of a neck angle on it. And I'm going to do what I would call a reverse neck reset. Normally when you do a neck reset, it's because there's not enough saddle left to get the action you want. But this guitar has the opposite problem. I can't remember if somebody had already reset the neck or not. It's odd they haven't. So it's odd to have a Martin with this much overset. You know, normally they're underset quite a bit. But that's the way it is. So let me show you. The action when it came in was good, but that's how much saddle it has on it. And that is massive. It's just, God, it's way too tall. Again, the action was great, but the saddle is huge. So in the middle, it's sticking up 220 above the bridge. And over on the bass side, 230. God, that's about 100,000ths of an inch too much. And especially on the low E, where the saddle comes close to the pinhole, this is a super sharp angle. And it's just getting a lot of torque on the bridge. You might think more is better, but in my experience, tall saddles tend to give a kind of a thumpy sound. I don't know if this is a fact or not. This is just my hypothesis on this. But it's kind of like having a trampoline where, you know, your trampoline has springs on it, right? And you can different springs in there for different weights of people. So if you were a true Olympic gymnast, you would want a certain amount of bounce. And what I have here is like a 300-pound person jumping on a kid's trampoline. It just bottoms it out. Or on a motorcycle, for instance, if your motorcycle's not sprung correctly for it, you're all the way down at the bottom and you're not using the full bounce of the thing. You're down here and you're using up all the travel immediately. You don't have any suspension. That's how I kind of view these tops. There is a bounce to the top. You know, you can push on that top and you can see it actually physically moving. So if you over torque that thing, it's got no bounce to it. And just from listening to the things, again, in my experience, when it's got too tall of a saddle, it sounds thuddy. And I don't like that. I like that complex, smooth, silky tone. So what I did before I took the neck off here, I measured everything. I'm going to go to my spec sheet here. And so again, what I found out was the saddle was 230, and I would like to have it 130 out of the bridge. So that's 100,000ths of an inch difference on the action, which translates to twice that. No, I'm just going to straight 100,000. Yeah, I'm not measuring the action. The action is good. So I want this saddle to go down 100,000ths of an inch. The ratio between the saddle and the heel is 1 to 3. So this is 1, 2, and 3. So it's pretty close to that ratio. So 100,000ths of an inch divided by 3 is 33,000ths of an inch. Give or take. You know, we can go with 30,000ths of an inch. So I want this neck. Let's put this neck back on here for a minute. I want this neck to tilt forward this way. Let's get this in the camera if I can. I want this neck to go forward. I'm going to exaggerate here for you. I want this neck to go like this. Like that. Instead of normally I would want it to come back further. But I want it to go forward. So I have two options here. One option is to take a little bit of material off of the heel, top of the heel right here. And that's going to cause the neck to tilt forward. And it takes a surprisingly little amount of material off of the heel. There's a ratio to that too. But it takes a surprising little amount off of here. However, then I re-sand this to make that little divot right here disappear. So then the neck goes forward. I haven't touched the heel. However, that causes the neck to go forward a little bit more, shortens the scale just a little bit. And typically on Martin guitars, you don't have a whole lot to play with on shortening the scale. They're already a little bit sharp on the low E. They need to go back, if anything. So, this is an HD28. I'm going to give you my thought process here. This is the HD28, and while it is a nice guitar, there is nothing collectible or unique about it at this point. It's a standard 70s. Is it a 70s? 663. Oh, that makes it what? 80s, 90s? 90s. Yeah, I've got to go check my chart, but it's 663. No, it's a 90s HD28. There's just really nothing super special about it. Plus, it's a gig guitar. The guy plays it in a gig. It's got a pickup in it already, which I installed several years ago. And I'm not sure why it got away from me with that thought of the saddle. Somebody else did this saddle. Anyway, so while it's a nice guitar, it's Indian rosewood, it's thicker spruce top. There's nothing really special about it. It's got some dings on it already, you know. So I think the solution I'm going to use is to put a shim under the back of the neck right here in order to create a reverse angle on that. That shim needs to be 30 thousandths of an inch thick, and I have this stock here that comes from tobacco cigar boxes, which a friend of mine who owns a cigar shop in Amarillo, Texas, gave me a whole box of this mahogany thin wood stock, and this stuff is so perfect for neck reset shims and things like that. So I got a measure piece here, and this piece right here is 25 thousandths of an inch thick. I mean, gosh, that's just about going to do it, you know. 25 thousandths times 3 would be 75 thousandths. So 230 minus 75 is 155. It's going to leave me with a saddle of 155. That's pretty acceptable. You know, I was shooting for 130, but 155 is pretty acceptable on a short saddle. So really, you know, all it's going to take is one of these little shims here. Let me move up to the camera. Show you how thin that is. That's it, you know. I'm putting one of these shims under the neck, and the reality is I'll probably go ahead and put two under there, and then I'll sand it down just like I would do normal neck reset, and I'll pop it exactly where I want to. So I could cut me a shim back like that to go onto the neck right here, like that. And I can reverse shim this neck, and so this is what it's going to look like roughly. Move up again. Going to be about that thick. Now, that's the raw mahogany stock too. I can stain it, and it's never going to match perfectly. You know, you'll be able to see it's there if you look at it. But the main important thing here is I have done no damage to the neck or the guitar. You know, I haven't cut into here at the top of the heel. I haven't cut into here. I haven't shortened the scale. I've done nothing that cannot be easily reversed. So if for some reason he needed to reverse this situation, it'd be easy to remove the neck again, take my shim off, and you're right back where you started. That's not true if I cut a little bit up in here. Now, I will cut up into the top of the heel right here many times in order to correct a situation like this where the neck is a little bit off skew. It's pretty common for the, you know, when you're doing a neck reset, if it wasn't done right the first time or whatever, it's fairly common for the neck to be skewed a little bit so that the strings run from here and then, you know, go off the fingerboard or come too close. I want those strings balanced on there. So I will frequently come in here and take just a tiny bit of material, but I'm talking about a tiny bit of material, and then reshape this heel to pull the neck in like this. There's lots of reasons for that. Maybe the finish is damaged over here. Maybe it wasn't on straight to begin with. So I will do that in certain cases, but in this case, I think the best solution for this guitar is to shim that neck back, shim it up, using these thin shims. So that's what I'm going to do. And then again, once again, I'm going to go a little bit over in the shims so that I can sand them down to where I want to get that neck angle right exactly where I want it to be. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm not sure if I'm going to run all this on the camera or not, because it's kind of a tedious process. But the first thing to do is clean up the heel right here. It's got a lot of glue in it, a lot of junk in there that's not going to let this sit straight. So I'm going to clean up that glue and get a nice surface in there. I'm going to glue a shim on each side. And I'm not going to run that shim all the way up to here, because this has to be, up here at the top, this has to be 0. And you just can't get a shim down to 0. The 0 really has to start like about right back here. So I'm actually going to cut these shims to where they stop a little bit short of the top right here, maybe about right here or so. And yeah, there'd be a tiny little gap up there, but I've got tricks for filling that. I use a little bit of wood putty, something like that. Hide glue, you can use various tricks because that gap will be so absolutely tiny. And I've had great success with an oil-based wood putty. It's just going to take a tiny smear in there. Martin would probably fill it with glue. And they do that on their necks. They take a line of glue and they smear it down there, and they'll hide any kind of little gaps or wobbles or anything like that. I use a wood putty for the same thing, and I use a toothbrush and just kind of just smear it in there. And we're talking about like almost dust here. I mean, it's just such a minute amount, but it can really hide that. One other option might be to check the finish up here at the top of the neck block right here, and you could scrape a little bit of the finish off right here. Just make sure it's smooth. Scrape a little bit of the finish off right here, and that'll let that neck slide in just a little bit more too. It'll also have the function of letting the neck sit inside the finish, so you're creating like almost a notch. The finish has a thickness to it, right? It's about 0.006 to 0.008 of an inch thick. So if you knock that off so that, I'm trying to visualize this with my fingers, you create a ledge and the neck will fit into that. The neck will come up to the side of the finish, and that's a pretty good way to hide the edges of the neck to the body. I used to do that routinely, scrape all this finish off right here where the neck was, and the neck would kind of click into there. The finish would come up to the edges, and it does a pretty good job of hiding that joint. So that's another option, and I'm definitely going to make sure this is clean up here, before I put that neck on, because I can see a little bit of a ridge right here where the finish is a little bit bubbled. So I'll probably clean up the top, whatever that is, clear the finish off of there, and I'll run the shim pretty much up to that, so that'll click in like that, and it will help hide that tiny little gap that's going to be up there. So I think I will shut off the camera for now and commence in this tedious job of fitting the neck shim, and when I get it fitted, I'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay? So, reverse neck reset. Alright, here we are. We've got a couple of rough shims in here. This is what they look like. Pretty ugly, huh? And so like I told you I was going to do, I put 2 shims in here. And this one runs up to about right here. This one runs up to, there you can see it. There's a gap right there, and the other one runs to about right there. And then I'm going to sand them all in together so that they're smooth. I use super glue to attach those. And if you're paying attention, you're going to wonder what I'm going to do about the end cap here, because the shims are going to space this out 0.30 of an inch. There's going to be a gap at the end cap. There's 2 things I can do here. I can not worry about it because it's tiny little gap and the end cap is clear. Or I can go ahead and put a little bit of white binding stock in there to kind of fill it in. The color is never going to match. So I don't know if it's fortunate or not, but the end cap popped off when I was doing this. And they do that sometimes. There's a weak glue and whatever. So I put the end cap in the guitar, and I might just splice a piece of white binding plastic to it before I glue it back on, which will be one of the last things I do. So this is what our shims look like right now, and I'm going to go trim them down. The way I like to trim them down is to take these ears. This is hard to get on the camera. Take these ears right here and just nip them off with my fret nippers. Get them real close, and then I will use sandpaper and very carefully just come in here from this side and just start working them down. You've got to be super careful because you don't want to hit the finish right here and take that finish away. So I will probably err a little bit on the side of making these shims not exactly perfectly flush with the heel. They would be, you know, like if you rubbed your finger over, you could probably still feel it. But I'll get pretty close and I'll be back and I'll show you what they look like. Alright, here's what we got now. Here's our shims. And they're all nice and smooth. And I smoothed out the transitions here between this one and this one. So this one goes straight into the neck now, and this one goes smoothly into this one. So now I have one great big smooth shim. So from here on out, it's going to be pretty much a standard neck reset. And then when I get down to the very end, then I will stain these right here, and then I'll be back. And I've got the end cap all smooth. So that's how much shim I'm starting with. Okay, and I'm going to take this down from here until the neck fits. So we'll be back. This is difficult to film, but let's see if I can get it across to you. So what I've got now, I've got the neck rough fitted on here, and I'm trying to get these shims to fit really nice, you know, against the body. It's almost like using a neck blank now. You know, I've got to fit these staggered shims onto here. So it's not bad right now because I've been working on it already. So let's get a little bit closer on that. And what I'm doing here, I'm going to have to do this with my long hand in order to get the camera in here. But I've got this sandpaper strip, which is what I use for neck resets. Slide it in there like this. And then I'm putting pressure on the front of the neck. So normally if I was doing a neck reset, I would push back on it so as to sand back in here. But in this case, I want to preserve the rear. Again, this is a reverse neck reset. So everything is backwards up at this point. So what I'm trying to do now is sand it more up into here to get that transition super smooth. I'm not taking it off of the back right now. Okay, so I'm going to pull down on the front of the neck right here. And not real hard either, you know, just enough. And I'm going to pull the sandpaper strip very gently, because I don't want to rip up my shim. You know, it's kind of fragile wood right now, being so super thin mahogany. But I'm just doing this, putting pressure on the front, and drawing that sandpaper just a little bit. It's actually not even touching the sandpaper at the rear right now. Blow that dust out of there. I'm going to come to the other side and do this, which you're not going to be able to see. But I am working, you know. I'm not just doing these videos for you. So I might as well do this. I've got it together here. Okay, let's see what I got. So see, that's looking really nice now. It's very smooth. Let me get as close as I can up in here. Trying to hold on to the guitar and everything. That's a nice smooth transition. It's looking really good. The neck is almost fitting in there. And then what I'm going to do, my yardstick here, and I'm going to check it at the body. So, I'm Let me angle that camera down a little bit more so you can see what's going on here. Sorry about that. Here we go. That's pretty good. I think you can see that. I'm going to put the neck on, which you can't see. Lay the yardstick on the top here. And this is just an indication. But what I see is this gap right here. And let's see if we can get you in there. Just a tiny gap in there. Actually, it's not too bad, really. It's probably going to go a little more than that. I know I've got enough shim in there at least. So I was looking at a gap of probably 25 or 30 thousandths of an inch, and it's probably going to be closer to about 100 thousandths of an inch when I get done. You do not want that straight edge resting on the bridge when the guitar is not strong. It should be resting when the guitar is strong and under tension. It's got to clear the bridge right now by that much, you know, 100 thousandths of an inch, whatever it is. We're getting pretty close here though, so I want to make sure. In fact, I'm good enough now. I want to see what's going on here, so I'm going to go ahead and take this tape off that I used to protect the body while I was really going at it with the sandpaper. Come on. Kind of a handicap not having fingernails sometimes. Now, also on this guitar, the binding was really loose. The herringbone was literally coming apart, so I have glued the binding a couple times using a technique that I have in one of my other videos. So I'm just being real careful here not to rip my repair. Yeah, I could use a little bit more right there. Try not to rip my repair up. Okay. Now, this neck is not going down in there really nice. So I'm going to find out. You see, this still got this little gap right here. And there's no shims on the heel yet. Meaning shims in here. Which is going to have to be. So I want to know why isn't that going down there easy. So there's a gap right there. And I think, I'm looking. It's just not going. So there's some glue or something in here. Needs to get cleaned up. Probably right there. A little bit of glue. Right there. I could be keeping it from going down. It needs to go down real smooth and easy. If that pops up and you have to force it down, something's not quite right. You will force it, but only at the end when you have the shims on and everything is tight. Then you're going to push it down a little bit. But right now, that's the reason I said there's no shims in here. That neck ought to fit in there pretty easily. And it'd be nice if it was snug and I didn't have to do any more shimming, but that's not going to happen. A little bit of glue up here in the film. This guitar had a lot of glue in it. And that's why I'm suspicious that it's never had a neck reset, because it had a lot more glue than I normally see. And messy glue. Just not normal for what I see anymore. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but when you see something like that, I don't know, maybe it was a guy's first day on job or something, you know. Okay, I'm just getting the glue off of there. And I know I'm going to have to kick the neck back a little bit. That looks good. Let's see what the body looks like. Still quite a bit of glue. There's a piece of binding. Let me get that out of there. Okay, I'm going to go over here for a minute. I'm going to scrape this clean right here. I haven't done that yet, and there might be some glue or something that's holding that up. You got to also look down into the dovetail, into the neck block. Make sure all that's nice and clean. So we'll be back again in a minute. Alright, here we are moving along. I've got that sanded in there where I like it pretty well. I've got a clamp on here just to make sure that's down snug. What I'm doing now is I'm checking the E to E alignment. And it shouldn't change because I didn't touch the top of the neck. But, you know, you always want to check these things. I've got a saddle in here that is 145 out of the bridge, which is just about what I want. And I'd like to see a low E right now. There's just a little bit of tension on these strings. And I would like to see this low E be about 68 thousandths of an inch off the neck, off the 12th fret right here. So that's my check. And I know from experience that at low tension like this, 68 thousandths is going to translate to about 93 thousandths more or less when it's under full tension. So, and the way I've checked that is to take a guitar that's correct, 93 thousandths of an inch, fully strung up, de-string it, put just a little tension on the 2 E's, and then measure it. See what it is. 60 to 68 thousandths of an inch is pretty accurate. So, and I don't want to go any taller on that saddle, so instead of shooting for 60, I'm going to shoot for 68. And so if anything, I might end up dropping that saddle just a hair when it's under full tension. And that's fine with me. So, and I'm getting just a little over 68. So, wouldn't hurt to give it about 3 or 4 more swipes on the back of the shims here. I'm going to check, make sure the neck's not pulling forward. I don't have it in the neck reset jig right now. Right now, it's tight enough that it's just barely coming out. It's not going to need much shim to get fit correctly here. I'm looking at the shim right here. It looks really good, you know. But I think I'm going to take just a couple more swipes. Drop that neck back just a little bit more. I want it to be right at 68 thousandths because remember I told you I'm happy with 60 to 68, you know, somewhere in between there. It's a little over 68 right now, so it's a little past my normal spec. And I don't mind taking that saddle down, but I shouldn't want to end up with it being 120, you know. I want it a minimum of 125, so I'd really like to have it like 135 to 155. And right now it's 145, so if I drop it down anymore, you know, I don't want to do another neck reset on this guitar. I'm going to have it right here in my hand. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that neck back just a little bit here, and then we'll be back. It's a lot of work, you know. You got to put those shims in there, and then it's a normal neck reset after that. So I spent, what, an hour and a half just getting the shims where I like them. And I haven't stained them yet, and I will do that. So here's what they look like at this point. And you can see them in all their unstained glory there, and they're really not that thick, you know. Time I get those stained. And the thing with the staining is really not even to make them, don't even try to match the mahogany on the neck. Just stain the things black. And, you know, stain them dark so that they look like a shadow. I found that to be really just about the best way to do it. Because you're never going to match it. First of all, the grain orientation is wrong. The grain orientation on the neck is going this way, the shims is going this way, so the grain orientation is just all wrong. You're never going to match it exactly correctly. So you might as well just not even really try to hide it, but make it something completely different. And your eye will look at it and go, oh, it's a shadow. It doesn't look at it and go, oh, that's a color that doesn't match. Now just make them black, you know, or make them super dark brown, make them blend, make them into a shadow. And so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, battery's about to run out here. I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to take a couple more swipes. We'll come back one more time. Hey there, we're back the next day. And guitar, been sitting all night. I did the neck reset on it, just a standard procedure, which I didn't video because I've done this before. So here is the current saddle. And it measures in at about 145 thousandths of an inch over the bridge, which is pretty perfect, as you can see. The action is currently just a little bit over 93 thousandths, which is fine because I just roughed that saddle in there to approximately the height that I wanted, which, I described. I said, I'm just going to cut it down to about what it was right, and then I'll fine tune it later. But here's 90 thousandths, and we come up to the low, 93 thousandths roughly. 90, we're looking real good across there. So of course I'm going to have to come in and fine tune the saddle, that's no problem. 76, I may have to end up making a new saddle, but I'm going to let the guitar sit for a couple of days before I do anything. Here's what that shim looks like. The wall's in the way right here, and I didn't have to use putty or anything. I got a really good tight fit. You can see it's dark like I talked about. I didn't try to hide that much or anything, and that's okay. It looks, I don't mind if that's apparent, because then if there's ever another repairman, he knows what's going on here. And the only person that's visible to is going to be the player. Here's the in block. And there's a small gap right there, but that's fine. I might fill that in with a little smear of glue or something like that. But now we have a reverse neck reset on this guitar. The saddle's where it should be, the action's where it should be. Everything's hunky-dory. Got really good alignment down the neck here, which, is to be expected. I mean, I'm doing the neck reset. I'm picky about this. So, all right, so that's the basic procedure that I use for what I call a reverse neck reset, where I'm actually bringing the angle of the neck forward again, like this. Normally, in a normal neck reset, again, you're bringing it back, but on a reverse, you're bringing it forward. So, saddle's great. Guitar should sound a lot better when it gets done. So, here we go. See you later.